What's up, guys? Alex Scott here with JamPlay, doing the big July 4th live stream event. Happy Independence Day, everybody. Very, very happy to be here. Hope you guys had a good time doing trivia there with Mr. Chris Lipe. Definitely a good time. I believe, do we have sound on the bass guitar?
We do.
Mr. Chris? It's okay. We're still getting things lined up here. But again, thank you guys very, very much for tuning in. This should be a pretty good time. I've got a simple lick that I brought with me that can be done. Oh, there we go. I just brought a super easy lick that can be done either on bass or on guitar. I do it on bass as kind of a slapping lick. You could do it fingerstyle on bass as well as either fingerstyle or picking on a guitar. And it's just kind of a cool, funky triplet lick, and I've got it in E and A, and then I've got a backing track to go along with it as well that we can play along with to practice it a little bit. But yeah, super fun lick, kind of a tongue twister for the fingers, a finger twister, if you will. So a good thing to practice coordination, a good thing to practice time, but ultimately it's a pretty straightforward little lick that you guys can use in a lot of different contexts, whether it's if you're playing rock stuff or funk or fusion or sort of anything in that wheelhouse. So yeah, we're going to go ahead. I'll show you guys the lick. We'll play along together if you guys have your instruments handy, or you guys can just watch. We'll start with just a metronome, do it at a couple different slower tempos, kind of work through the fretting and some of the techniques that go into the lick. And then we can jam along with the backing track a little bit. And then after that, I was planning on just opening up the floor and we can do some Q&A with you guys. And that can really pertain to anything, whether it's questions about the lick that I'm about to teach you guys, definitely good, or really just anything you guys might be curious about. I've got obviously a lot of experience on bass, also being a full-time gigging musician, and I work a lot in recording studios and stuff. So just really open Q&A for you guys, anything you might be curious about in regards to the industry or recording stuff or gear or technique or theory or really just anything. I figured now would be a good time if you guys have any questions or are curious about anything in those realms to toss it over in that comment box. We got Captain Chris over there and Captain Jeff, and they'll be hooking it up with the questions and the commentary as we go along. But yeah, so let's jump straight into looking at this little lick that I brought for you guys here. So like I said, it's a triplet lick. Triplet meaning basically it's a lick that is eighth notes, but instead of normal eighth notes, they're going to be eighth note triplets. So where there would normally be, obviously an eighth note is going to happen twice in one beat. So if you're counting in 4/4, 1, 2, 3, 4, normally there would be 8 eighth notes in one measure, right? So each beat would get 2 eighth notes. Well, in this lick, each beat is going to get 3 evenly spaced notes, and these are eighth note triplets. So, let me pull up a metronome here real quick. Sorry, get this going here. So we've got our click going. This is at 80 BPM. So now you'll see we got the tab and the notation on screen here. And as I'm sure you are noticing, like I was just saying, there are 3 notes where you might normally be used to seeing 2 with an eighth note. So instead of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, we're going to be putting 3 notes in the same amount of space. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. Okay? So here, we can slow our metronome down just a little bit here. And take a look at the meat of this lick. So, it's really easy and we're going to be utilizing a couple of different really simple techniques. Now again, I do this as sort of a slap pattern on the bass, but whether you're a bass player or guitar player, whether you're finger picking or using an actual pick or slapping, there's different ways to approach this lick from any of those approaches, more or less. So we're going to be using hammer-ons. Is sort of the core idea as this lick, and it's what lets us get sort of the speed that we need without having to do too much craziness with our hands. You know, you're not picking super fast necessarily because 1 out of every 3 notes is going to be a hammer-on, so you're going to be able to sort of speed the lick up a little bit easier than if you were having to pick every single individual note. And it's just a really easy sort of repeating pattern that starts with our open E string, and then we're going to do this hammer-on the 12th fret, which is our octave, right? And then our pick or pluck is going to be the 14th fret on the A string, okay? That is pretty much that shape is the whole lick. We just move it around. So you start, that's your first one, open, hammer, pick. Then you're just going to move it down a fret, open, hammer on the 11th fret, pick on the 13th on the A string, open E, hammer on the 10th, 12th fret A string, pluck, open E, 9th fret hammer on, and then 11th fret pluck on the A string. So let's take that again real slow. Open, hammer, pluck, open, hammer, pluck, open, hammer, pluck, open, hammer. So that's our first bar. And like I said, once you practice that motion, you can speed it up gradually to the point where you can get it about to there, which is it's a really, really handy lick for being able to bust out something that looks a little flashy, sounds really cool, but isn't really that technically difficult to execute once you get your hands used to that pattern. And like I said, if you're picking, you do the same thing. Open, hammer, pluck, open, hammer, pluck, open, hammer, pluck, open, hammer, pluck. Okay? So that's our first bar. Our second bar is exactly the same pattern. We're just, instead of going to the A string, we're going to move that last note over to the D string so that it's an octave apart as opposed to a fifth. Because when we're going open E, hammer 12th fret, and then 14th fret on the A string, that's a fifth right there, right? So if we just take that, instead of playing our 14th fret there on the A string, we move it over to the 14th fret on the D string. Now we just get an octave, right? And we do the same exact pattern. Open, fret, pluck that octave, and move it down. Open, 11th fret, 13th fret D string, right? Open, hammer, pluck, open, hammer, pluck, open, hammer, pluck, open, hammer, pluck. So that's our second bar of our little lick here. So again, sort of recap real quick. Our first bar, open, hammer, pluck, open, hammer, pluck, open, hammer, pluck. Second bar, there's our octave. So that's our first 2 bars back to back. Right? So now the second half of this lick, I've just moved it over, and it's exactly the same pattern. It just all starts on the A string instead of on the E string. So where we're going, open, hammer 12th, pluck the next string over at the 14th. We just move that whole idea over to our A string. And then again with the octaves. Open, hammer 12th, pluck that octave. Okay? So what ends up happening is all your fingers end up lining themselves up really, really well to execute the whole lick as one big thing. Because as you'll notice, if we start first bar, now to move the octaves. Now we're going to move over to that A string. And this 14th fret D string, that's E, right? Because in the second bar, when we're doing our octaves off of our E string, we're hitting two big E's. When we transition over to playing the pattern on the A string, we start by hitting that exact same note, right? And then we continue through octaves. And then just repeat the whole thing. Octaves to the A string. And that's the whole lick. So again, I'm obviously doing it slapping. You can pick it. You can use pick on a guitar. And as you guys know, on your guitar, you have E, A, D, G. It's just an octave up from the bass. So you guys, your lowest pitched 4 strings are tuned exactly the same. So you guys can use exactly the same pattern on guitar, exactly the same fretting and everything, and just find whatever way is most comfortable for you guys to pick it on guitar, and you'll be able to translate this lick really, really easily. And once you practice the motions, it sounds a little odd when you play it real slow like this, but as you are able to speed it up, you can get it faster and faster and faster, and it ends up being a really cool little lick that you can throw into a solo or as a fill or something like that. That's a little bit flashier, a little bit busier, and just has a really cool kind of neat groove to it and a neat vibe to it. And again, really, really easy to practice slow, and then gradually speed it up. Because it's just such a sort of an easy motion once you get used to it. And it looks and sounds very, very fast, but because you're doing that hammer-on, it ends up being a lot less work for your hands. And you can get a little bit more speed out of your sound, and it kind of create the illusion that you're playing faster than you are in a weird way, I guess. So let's go ahead. I'm going to pull up a metronome, and we're going to start by running the lick through we'll start at 70 BPM, and then we'll sort of gradually increase it from there until we get to about 120 BPM, which is what the backing track is at. So we'll start slow. We'll run through it a couple of times. If you guys have your instruments handy, you can run through it with me. And then we'll sort of work the tempo up a little bit until we get to the speed of the backing track, and then we will play along with the track. So here we are at 70 BPM. So again, with these 8-note triplets, there's going to be 3 notes per quarter note. So ba 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 ba. That's where we're going to start. Okay. And 1, 2, 3. So there you go. This is also a really great exercise doing triplets like this, especially at the slower tempos. Really, really help you work on your timing and your finesse, and sort of making sure that everything that you're playing is really nice and tight and to that metric grid that is oh so very important in music. So here, let's bump it up a little bit. We'll go to 80 BPM now. So just a touch faster. And let's try it here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's a little bit faster at 80. And this, in general, this is a really, really great way to learn any new lick, or pattern or phrase or whatever, is starting at a really slow tempo, 60, 70 BPM, something like that, on your metronome, and learning it so that your hands are really relaxed, your muscles are nice and calm and sort of receptive to new muscle memory, and you just start slow. And once you feel like you can play it basically perfectly at that really slow tempo, you bump it up just a little bit, just to the point where it becomes challenging again. And you practice it there. Once that becomes solidified and starts to feel easy, you bump it up again. And you just keep doing that. And that's how you can train your hands to play stuff really, really fast, but without stressing out, without your hands are still relaxed because you trained them at a slower tempo and gradually worked it up. They know, the muscles know exactly what to do, and they know how to stay, relaxed and calm and not stress themselves out as you approach those faster speeds with your playing. So let's keep going here. Let's grab our metronome. Let's move it up to 90. And we will check it out at 90 BPM. So getting a little faster now. Alrighty. 1, 2, 3, 4. Try finger picking too. So again, you can do it slap style, you can do it finger style. If you've got, if you're playing guitar, you can pick either with downstrokes, downstroke, hammer, downstroke, downstroke, hammer, downstroke, or you can do downstroke, hammer, upstroke. I don't have a pick handy, but you get the gist. So that's why I thought this would be a cool lick for this event today, because I know we've got a real diverse group of guys out there, everybody from beginner to super advanced between guitar and bass. So I figured it'd be cool to bring in a lick that we could sort of all share in and all enjoy and apply to a lot of different stuff that we're doing. So let's keep bumping our tempo up here. Let's move it on. That was 90. We're going to move it up to 100 now. So again, just gradually increasing our tempo, just speeding it up bit by bit by bit and letting our hands really get used to the pattern, right? So that once we get it really, really fast, it becomes really easy, really, really natural, really smooth. Again, muscles relaxed, stress-free, all that good stuff. So a little faster yet again. This is 100 BPM. 1, 2, 3. So there you go. Move it up a little bit more to 110, and we are almost at the speed that our backing track is at, which is 120. So we're getting close to the speed that we're going to be playing it with, along with the other instruments. So 110, a little bit faster now even. 1, 2, 3. Keep missing those fifths in there. Yeah, and this is, I mean, even you're watching me, this is great practice for me to just break things down. And again, look at them from all these different tempos, gradually increasing, especially with something like triplets, an exercise that's as rhythmic as this is really, really great for building your time and your feel, as well as sort of being able to concentrate on multiple things at once. Just as far as concentrating on keeping that feel nice and rigid and well aligned, but then also, focusing on where your fingers are going and keeping the lick in line. As you guys might have noticed, I played it wrong a couple of times in there, but that's okay. That's the whole point of this is practice. So what we can do now, move it up, and we're going to play it with the metronome at 120, so that we can just hear the lick by itself. And then once I've run through that a couple of times, I will bring in the backing track, and we can sort of hear it alongside all the other instruments. So here's just our metronome. This is now at the final speed, which is a pretty good little clip. So here we go. And 1, 2, 3. So, up to speed now. It's definitely faster than where we started, that's for sure. But, again, if you, obviously, just because we're, live on camera right now, it's a little bit rushed. If you guys were doing this on your own, you would probably take a little more time at the slower tempos. But, this is the number one way if you're looking at a lick or a riff or anything that's just a little bit out of reach of your playing ability. This is the number one way that you're going to be able to learn stuff like that and play it really successfully, make it sound really, really good, is by doing this technique of slowing everything down and playing it along with the metronome and mastering whatever riff it is you're trying to learn at that really slow tempo, getting your hands used to it at a slow tempo, and then gradually notching it up and up and up until you get it to the speed where you want to be able to play it ultimately. So let's go ahead. I'll pull up the backing track here, and we will give it a listen, and I'll play along. And we just repeat the lick through 4 full times, I believe. And I'll do it half slap and half finger style so you guys can kind of hear the difference. And we've got some keys, we've got a couple different guitar tracks, obviously some drums on this. And there's actually a guitar that's going to come in, and the guitar is going to be playing the riff alongside the bass. So you'll be able to hear the riff on a guitar as well as on a bass at the same time, and kind of hear how they complement each other, being an octave apart. So let's check it out. So there you go. There's a cool little funk shuffle backing track for you guys to practice along with this lick. And fun little track. I feel like it demonstrates especially the rhythm of this 8th-note triplet that we're talking about really, really well. It gives you a nice framework to kind of lock into. And again, this lick is a really, really great crossover lick for guitar as well. And you wouldn't necessarily be playing it just like we just did as like a groove to a song for an extended period of time. But once you get it at about that speed under your fingers and you start speeding up even more and more, you can work it into your soloing, and your riffing, all that kind of stuff. And once you get it up to speed, it can be a really cool kind of flourish. You can move it around the neck. And just generally take this idea of open, hammer, strike, especially with octaves, and move it anywhere. Start from, any string, whether it's... You can take this same kind of idea, this same finger pattern, and really apply it to all kinds of different stuff as a groove, as a riff, as a lick, as part of a solo, phrasing kind of a thing. And, it looks flashy, it sounds really cool, and it can give you some really interesting options to move around your instrument chromatically. So, in just a moment here, I think we'll jump over into the Q&A. I'll run through this backing track just one more time for you guys. While I'm doing that, if you guys have any questions, either about this lick or really anything music-related in general, technique, theory, gear, really anything, that's kind of what I'm looking to do with you guys, if y'all are into it, is just do a kind of an open discussion about anything you guys are curious about. So let me run through this backing track one more time here. Get your questions over there in the chat, and Captain Chris will get them up on the screen, and we can do a little back and forth before the giveaway at the end of the hour. So let's take a listen to this backing track one more time here. And 1, 2, 3, 4. So there you go. There is another time through our backing track. So now, just a few quick things before we move into the Q&A. Just a few announcements, like they said at the beginning of the hour, or I guess at the end of the last hour with good Mr. Chris Lipe there. We've got a special deal. It is $109 for membership right now, I believe, yes. And that comes with 5 free track packs, correct? Yes, excellent. And one of which is this really, really cool track pack that I did called Flavors of Rock. And it comes with a version either for bass or for guitar, so they're the same tracks, but there's a set of tracks that have no bass, so you can practice your bass along with them. And they have chord charts and chord diagrams and all that good stuff. And then there's another set that has bass and rhythm guitar, but no lead guitar, so you guys can practice your soloing, your phrasing, riffs, melodies, all that kind of stuff. And then there's some tracks in there that just have riffs as well, so you can practice through ear training, sort of picking out a riff, learning it on your own against another guitar track. All kinds of really, really fun stuff. So it's 20 tracks. It kind of runs the gamut through all different styles of rock, everything from classic rock, hard rock. There's a really cool kind of like reggae, ska rock track in there. Some sort of lighter, like 60s psychedelic stuff. It really just, it runs the gamut. So a ton of really, really fun stuff in there. That's an awesome deal for between everything you get on JamPlay and 5 whole packs of play-along tracks, all for low price of $110. That's really an awesome deal. So if you are not already a subscribed member, definitely go check out the site. This is a sale you guys do not want to miss. So yeah, I suppose if there are some questions, let's.
Yeah, we actually have a ton of questions.
Oh, really? Excellent.
So we'll get through as many as we can, and I'm going to start with a few that are specific to the exercise you just showed.
Okay, great.
And the first one is from Robert, and he's wondering what the primary application of this exercise would be.
Indeed. Well, that's, I mean, like I was saying, it's a lick to be thrown into a solo or used as sort of a fill to get maybe in between 2 different sections of a song. So if you from a bass player's perspective, if you were playing a slap groove for a song, maybe something simpler, and you're going from an A section to a B section, you can something to throw in as a fill to get from one part to another, something to throw into a solo as kind of a quick little flashy lick to just show off the chops a little bit. And that's, for guitar application, that is probably more where I would put it, as something to use in soloing. So again, as I have it laid out, where it's this big pattern, and then octaves, and then move over to the A, it's not necessarily meant to be played as that over and over and over again. Those are just a couple of different shapes, and it's an exercise to just kind of introduce this idea, this triplet pattern of open, hammer, pluck, as you move through either different chords or whatever. That's just kind of a general shape and a general pattern that once you get it under your fingers, you can apply all over the neck in all kinds of different keys, either with a chromatic motion, just like moving down 1 fret at a time like I'm doing here, or doing something like that. It's just kind of an exercise that gives your fingers a general idea of something that they can do lick-wise, as something kind of cool, flashy, unique, that can be used in a bunch of different contexts. So that would be the application, I suppose.
Okay, next question is from Richard Greer, and he's wondering, are you muting the E string with your palm when you're slapping on the A string? I keep ringing the E string when I try slapping over finger picking.
Excellent question, Mr. Greer. I'm not really doing a whole lot of muting through this whole thing. So when I slap, obviously you're open E, and then when you're hammering there, that's going to sound that. And then I guess my muting would come from when I'm just releasing that note. And just releasing the fret. and not necessarily taking your finger totally off the string. But just sort of letting it hang out there. So no, I'm not, muting with a palm here or anything. It really just is a thing of open, hammer, and then when you pop that note, you just release. And even for me, you can still hear it ringing a little bit. But because this is a bit of a faster lick, getting it super clean, and you can even let that note ring as well, it would sound fine. And let both notes ring at the same time would not be incorrect. So really either way, I mean, yeah, I'm really not doing a whole lot of specific muting stuff, but if you do want to mute it, I would say the easiest way is just to let the note go and let your finger hang out there on the string and stay relaxed, and that should mute the note for you. Excellent question, though.
All right, next one is from David Gatch.
Indeed.
And it says, your hand is at an awkward angle when plucking the strings. How do you keep from wrist injury?
Hand is at an awkward angle? I am not entirely sure which hand you are referring to. My right hand is pretty straight as far as all things are considered. My left hand, I suppose, is at a bit of an awkward angle as far as the wrist goes out here. But that's, once you get used to good proper bass technique, that's actually where you end up a lot of the time, and that's pretty relaxed and pretty natural. I mean, at least for me and for most bass players that I see, this is sort of how things end up falling on the instrument. When I'm talking about proper fretting technique on the bass, I always compare it to somebody hands you a sandwich, and you have a sandwich that you're going to eat, and you're just holding it like that. That's pretty much exactly the shape that you're going to want to bring around. You put your thumb right in the back of the neck, and it may look a little bit awkward on camera, but it's pretty natural. So, yes, it might look a little bit awkward, but it is actually a pretty natural stance. There's very little stress. So that's a really important thing with any musical instrument, whether it's bass or guitar or drums or anything else. You want your muscles to be as relaxed as they possibly can. I mean, obviously you got to move them and push the strings down and all that stuff, but you never want to be tight or tense or have any real weird angles. You want to let your body hang and kind of relax as naturally as it can, and then move into your correct playing position. And yeah, well, when I'm like this, and I'm especially when I'm doing an exercise like this, my muscles are still very relaxed. They're kind of doing the minimal amount of effort to hit the strings and get them to sound cleanly. So, yes, I suppose that would be my thoughts on awkward hand positions.
Okay.
But thank you. Excellent question.
Yeah, next question is from Russ, and we've had a lot of this one. If you could go over the actual slapping technique a little bit more in detail.
Yeah, absolutely. So slapping is sort of a deceptively simple thing. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but really the idea is I like to think of the string like a trampoline when you're slapping. And some guys do it here. Sometimes this is most comfortable. Some guys do it like this. I prefer to line my thumb up with the string, but really whatever is most comfortable for you, your body will kind of tell you, and just go with it, because there's really no wrong angle. Like Les Claypool from Primus, his thumb almost points straight up, and he slaps like this, and then sort of pops with the side of his finger. I prefer to have my thumb parallel to all the strings. And really, yeah, you think of the string like a trampoline. And using this big, wide pad of your thumb, you're just going to strike and let it bounce off. So when I go into hit, my thumb is relatively relaxed, and I just let the force of the string, because the slapping sound comes from the string hitting the fret. That's where you get that bow, that really hard attack. And the force of the string doing that, I treat it like a trampoline for my thumb. And I just let it bounce my thumb back off the string. And that's really all there is to it. And once you do that, then you're lined up to, you just grab around with your finger like that. If you guys can see, just the very tip of the finger. So instead of our normal plucking like that, we're angling it, we're curling it around just a little bit more, and we're pulling the string away from the fretboard and then letting it bounce back. And there I'm just muting alternating strings with my left hands. You can let them ring if you're just getting started with the slapping. So yeah, that's really all there is to it. It's deceptively simple. It takes a little bit of getting used to. But ultimately it's just this kind of trampoline-like mechanism that bounces your thumb back away from the string. And once you get used to it, it becomes really, really natural. So, little slapping technique primer.
And do you have to have any different setup on your guitar, the action being higher, anything? This question's from another Russ here.
It can help. It definitely can, if you're going really, really aggressive and playing a lot of slap, a bit of a higher action can definitely help. This particular bass for me has a bit of a higher action because it's more my slap bass, but it's certainly not impossible to slap on an instrument with really low action. So, but again, this exercise, I was playing it mostly slap, but it's also great for playing fingerstyle, or if you're a guitar player, obviously guitarists don't really slap like bass players do. So if you guys are picking or playing fingerstyle on guitar, those are all totally valid ways of approaching it as well. So, but yeah, higher action, if it's comfortable for you, and if you're doing a ton of slapping and you really want to get into it, it can definitely help. It gives you a little more room to breathe, but not required necessarily.
Okay, we got a few general questions.
Okay, excellent.
This one is from David Gatch. What is your take on a short scale bass for those of us with small hands?
Well, hello, David. Thanks for tuning in. I love short scale basses. I own one and play one myself. Not necessarily because I have small hands, but because the shorter scale on the strings actually gives it a really unique tone. When you make the scale shorter, it actually changes the tension on the strings. You still tune them to the same pitches, obviously, but it changes how the bass feels and it changes how it sounds. It sounds a little kind of tubbier and more sub, kind of low end. So I love short scale basses, and especially if you're a little bit of smaller stature, smaller hands, or maybe a younger viewer, I would definitely recommend a short scale bass. They're awesome. I am a big fan, and they're definitely a lot easier to play than a 34 or 35 inch scale. Like this is a 34, and that can be real big and be a lot of big stretches for some people. So a short scale definitely helps alleviate a lot of that while still maintaining being a good quality instrument that's going to sound really good. So I'm all for them, 100%.
All right, this one is from, hopefully I can pronounce this right, Evgeny Slusko, and the question is, how should guitarists think to be a good bass player in a short period of time?
How should guitarists think? That's an excellent question. Thanks for tuning in, man. How should you think? Bass comes out of being a really good bass player. Comes out of a lot of music theory. Knowing music theory really well and understanding it is a really, really critical part of being a great bass player, because, coming from the perspective of a guitar player, you can learn the chord shapes and, bar chords and all that stuff, but it's not necessarily as big of a requirement to get super deep into the music theory aspect of it as far as scales and intervals and all that kind of stuff goes. That stuff becomes a lot more important on bass, because since you're only playing one note at a time and you have this very interesting role in the band where you're kind of the glue between the drummer and everything else that's going on, whether it's a guitar player or horns or a piano player, anything. You know, your ability to play a bass line that moves through different chords and both supports the rhythm and supports all the melody that's going on. You have to have a good understanding of what scales are, how they work, what chords are, how they work, how the different chords relate to one another. And once you have a good understanding of that, then it becomes really easy to sort of see these patterns and understand, you know, different kinds of scales and different kinds of chords and how they all sort of fit together as one big picture. It lets you, you know, play bass lines that move through all that kind of stuff, and you know, it kind of connects everything together. So I would say if you haven't spent time learning a little bit about music theory, and it's really, it sounds complicated and scary. I totally get it. It's not nearly as much. I actually have on the JamPlay, I have a beginning bass concepts course, and there's a whole section of that course that goes through basic scales, you know, major chords, minor chords, what all that stuff means, how it all fits together, all the different patterns. So you can go check that out. That's a good resource. And there's lots and lots of other stuff on JamPlay that runs through that kind of stuff. So I would say if you haven't focused in that area yet, that's a really, really good place to start. Because the strings are tuned very similarly from bass to guitar, it's easy to translate kind of picking techniques and all that kind of stuff. That stuff moves over really, really easily between the two. But yeah, I would say that if you're looking for kind of a specific area to focus in, that starting with a little bit of music theory is a really, really good place to sort of get your hands wet, so to speak.
Okay, next one is from Tim Farnsworth, and I know some other people had this question as well. What is the difference between a P bass and a jazz bass,
Indeed.
and which works best with which genres of music?
Absolutely. Hello, Tim. Thank you so much for tuning in. Excellent question. Jazz bass and P bass are two of the oldest designs for bass guitar. They were both originally made by Fender. They have since been used manufactured by lots and lots of different companies, have their own versions, which this right here is from a company called Sire. This is a jazz bass. So basically, the main difference, a jazz bass has two pickups, one more towards the neck, one more towards the bridge. They are typically what we call single coil, which just means that they have one operating coil in them, which you can see they're rather narrow, and they just have the one row of silver dots. So one here, and then this one's kind of unique. I've got a lot of different controls down here, but really on a jazz bass what you have is called a blend, which is this knob right here. It just blends from each pickup to each pickup. So if it's all the way over here, we've got our bridge pickup, and you blend in the neck pickup, now it's both of them, and then you move it forward, now it's just the neck pickup. So here's our neck pickup. Here's in the middle. And if I move it over to the bridge, so each position just has a bit of a different tone to it. And that's a jazz bass. A P bass, on the other hand, just has one pickup. Now, if you look at one, it looks like it's two, but it's really wired as one. It's basically if you took this pickup and cut it in half and moved half of it a little bit. I wish I had my P bass here to show you guys, because that would help demonstrate a little bit better. But P bass just has one pickup and one volume knob, and that's pretty much it. They're about as simple and straightforward as a bass you can get. Jazz basses are not necessarily just for jazz. They do have really good tone for jazz, definitely. And I would use a jazz bass in a jazz context sooner than a lot of other basses. The way I look at it is generally a jazz bass is going to be good for jazz, funk, fusion, sort of anything more towards that end of things, whereas a precision bass or a P bass is going to be a little bit better for hard rock, classic rock, Anything that's a little bit more aggressive, a little bit louder, is going to kind of be more in the P basses territory, and anything that's a little bit lighter, a little bit more finesse, is going to be in the jazz basses world. So that's sort of the basics of the differences between the two. And like I said, many different companies have manufactured their own versions of jazz and of J and P basses over the years. So you have lots and lots of different examples and different basses to choose from. So I would that is the jazz bass P bass rant.